Good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Great, thank you for being here. And I'm happy to have everybody here with us this morning. I'm from Rye, New York. And you are where, Sherry, today?
I'm actually in Greenwich today.
Oh, okay. So we're not so far.
Yes. Yeah, not too far.
Yeah. So first, a couple of words about you before we'll start. It's going to be a fun session today. I was waiting for that because after speaking with Sherry for the last month or two, I think you have more charisma than Elton John. So I think it's going to be, yeah, I think it's going to be fun. So because and I think one of the interesting things is when we talked, I mean, many people heard you before speak about blockchain, speak about investments, speak about philanthropy. We'll talk about that. Obviously, these are it's going to be the main part of our session, but not too many people know your life story, which you and I talked about, which I thought was magnificent. So first of all, Sherry Pryor Witter, who's is the co-founder and CIO at the Witter Family Office. And just a couple of words, she runs the investment arm and the operations of the Witter Family Office since its inception. They continue to produce outsized returns in traditional financial asset classes. And she's adding to its investments, which are funds, different projects, SPVs, the blockchain and crypto space, which she believes is still in its early stages. Sherry has helped launch over 100 businesses and invested in over 30 projects, whose esoteric and non-market correlated mandates have created employment at all levels of income. Sherry has seeded and partnered with entrepreneurial mathematicians, engineers, and traders and portfolio managers. In addition to running the family office, she's a regular speaker and panelist at investment and family office conferences, hopefully at ours soon, offering perspective on liquid opportunities, blockchain, portfolio allocation and protection, and growth of family assets. Sherry also sits on the boards where she's synergistic. She launched her first of several hedge funds a year after graduating from University of Pennsylvania. Wow, that's incredible. And spending the traditional finance portion of her career at Lazard and ESL Investments. Wow. So good morning.
Good morning.
And I wanted to before we'll get into all the stuff that you're doing, hear about your life story, your family, where they came from, where you lived, and eventually meeting your husband, I believe, at the university. So I would love to hear a little bit about that.
Sure. So it feels like I've lived many lifetimes. And what's been interesting about our family is that each generation has made its own mark in different industries and different fields. So we are Witter branded. I am married to the grandson of Dean Witter, but genetically, I'm actually part Chinese, part Dutch. And the story, I really think, begins with my father, who fled from communism shortly after 1949. And in fact, my grandfather was a general in Chiang Kai-shek's army. So they settled Taiwan while it was still jungle. And my father came to the United States on an academic scholarship to Rensselaer, and he received 3 engineering degrees, and then started his own engineering consultant firm. So I actually grew up in the city. I grew up on 13th and 5th, and then the Upper East Side when New York was very, very different. And my father actually also, as a personal investment, started investing in low-income housing in the city around Stuytown and Alphabet City, and eventually converted, as he liquidated that real estate portfolio, into Apple stock for me and my brothers. And my personal story started downtown, and I actually went to Juilliard when I was age 7, and I was there for 10 years, studied under some great people, and then I became an unpaid intern at Cravath. So I was 13 years old and realizing that law was not for me. I think my city kid ADD prevented me from being able to dot all the I's and cross all the T's that you need to do in the legal industry. And then I went to become an unpaid intern at Lazard at age 14. So I was an unpaid intern there through high school and through college. And I think it was perfectly appropriate because I knew absolutely nothing as a teenager. And I feel like they did me a favor by having me there. I learned a lot. Then I went to the University of Pennsylvania.
But just before
And
that, at 14 already, you were working. Is that legal?
not anymore. Not anymore, but I learned a lot and learned a lot. Most importantly, I learned about what I didn't want to do. So I realized I didn't want to be an investment banker. I realized that there was things that I wanted to do in addition to what I learned at Lazard, but it was a tremendous experience and the people were great. And at University of Pennsylvania, I did a 6-year degree in 4. Then I went to work for Eddie Lampert, and I was only there for a year, but that was the year that he was looking at Apple stock. So that was fortuitous for our family. And then I started my first hedge fund after that. And yeah, so in between, I actually graduated from Penn when I was 20, got married at 21. You might know my son. So the baby I had at 21 also just graduated from Penn. He is the first quantum and photonics engineer to graduate from Penn Engineering, which means I think he has an EE, CSE, and minors in math and physics. So I had a baby on the hip. I had launched my first hedge fund. And then I met my current husband when we were 22 years old. So this branch of the family, Michael D. Witter, is the grandson of Dean Witter. And Dean Witter actually made his money selling bonds door to door, literally bringing Wall Street to Main Street. Previous to what Dean Witter was doing, most people couldn't just buy bonds. So he gave access to the common American, which I think is amazing. And out of Dean Witter's 3 children, the one success story was Bill Witter. So Bill Witter started one of the first small cap shops on Wall Street, and he brought in guys like Mario Gabelli, George Needham, and he was good friends with Larry Ellison. So through his relationship with Larry Ellison, he was able to buy Oracle at a very low cost basis for Michael. And it was great. That business was great for a while. And Michael and I was continuing to launch hedge funds all through my 20s. And sadly, Michael's father died in our mid 20s. And so in an act of sentimentality, Michael actually wanted to purchase his father's firm. And we put millions of dollars, our own money in. And unfortunately, we did not have any equity. And his mother actually owned the firm after his father died. And his mother changed her mind midstream. And so we tried to recoup our investment legally. So went into litigation. Unfortunately, that did not happen. So I would caution anyone against litigation because I think the only real winners ever are the lawyers. But through that, we made some profound discoveries of ourselves. Michael realized his passion was in philanthropy. So he runs the philanthropy arm of our family office. And I've always been more in the alternatives. And so I said, listen, let's take what, assets we have left between me and you and launch our family office. And in the first year that I launched our family office, I netted more for us than in 10 years of managing billions of dollars for clients. So a lot of that had to do with cutting overhead. So for us, it was all about the net, but also about being nimble. So we were no longer benchmarked against the Russell or the S&P. And through being so institutional, because previously Michael had managed money for Credit Suisse, for First National Bank of Omaha. I had 6 hedge funds and strategies. I met some tremendous managers who were returning in the hundreds. And so that was tremendous for us. That was great for us for the first 4 years. And I started having a little bit more of a difficult time finding investment opportunities and investment managers. I unfortunately made a mistake and I invested in an fraudulent online gaming company. But out of all these experiences and mistakes, what I try to do is learn from it. So what did I learn from that lesson? I think I realized that when I have cash in my pocket, I get antsy and I like to deploy even when it's not the right time. So I've learned that it's okay to sit in cash, that cash is indeed a position. I learned that the world of equities was changing. And that got me starting to look at crypto. I also learned that I could not do everything myself. So I'm much more of a trader. So I started building out an internal team to look at illiquids. I really just don't have the temperament for a lot of the illiquid. So now I lean on a lot of my managers. I lean on an internal team run by an investment banker named Ted. And then I actually also started to really just find that there are a lot more opportunities out there beyond equities. And so I slowly started making the shift towards crypto. And then it was very vanilla in the beginning, just Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then ultimately, finding the crypto community, I feel like I've finally found my people. I feel like the talent pool in crypto is amazing. And at this juncture, we're actually invested in 50 some odd projects, 30 some odd tokens, 40 some odd tokens. The portfolio is always changing. And so I endeavor to continue to build out the Witter Family Office as a top blockchain and crypto family office, not necessarily by AUMs, but by conviction and by percentage of our assets. And that's not to say we're not also growing out the other aspects, but I think I'm starting to decrease the percentage. So I continue to invest in liquid equities, which includes nat gas, options, volatility, utilities, electricity, private equity. But in private equity, I tend to like a shorter liquidity time fuse, 6 to 12 months. Venture, I still do venture, but venture is much more becoming venture liquid crypto, venture illiquid crypto, and then the crypto. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I realize that's an amazing privilege to have been born and raised in America and New York, and to meet incredible people to collaborate with. And when I think about the ethos of our family and the ethos of what I'm building, it's really hard work, humility, and also innovation. Every generation of our family from both sides has made money and added to the till in a different sector, in a different industry. And I continue to do that. And, but always from a position of humbleness and gratitude. So I'm very grateful to you, Denny, for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us. You mentioned Mario Gabelli. When I came to Rye, I saw their sign on the highway, and I was like, what are they doing here? And then I found out it's Starbucks and them. That's it. Rye is a small town, and I know his son very well. So funny you mentioned that. And going back a little bit, you said you when you started, you made you lost money because of fraud.
Yeah.
How did they manage, do you think, to get you to trust them? And what have you learned that today that would be harder to fool you?
So I actually met him. I met the person who represented him at a family office conference. So I started our family office in 2011, and there were very few family offices back then. And back then, I think there might have been some very large very, very large European family offices. But in America, I did not know that many. And so I went to the family office conference, and what I've learned is that not every family office is the same. And just because someone says they're a family office doesn't necessarily mean that they are. And when I went to this conference, what I realized is that the person who represented this fraudulent investment paid to be a speaker. And so it's really buyer beware. So I've learned the red flags are, due diligence, buyer beware, heed the red flags. If someone is acting like a bully and trying to push me into an investment before I'm ready, that should give me pause. So these are the things I've learned. And it was a very difficult experience because it's dragged on, and ultimately he's been prosecuted and he's been sentenced to many years in jail. Yes. But the reality is that it was a very painful experience for me. And I feel like it's important that I share it so that no one else has to go through what I went through.
And I think, I speak about it a lot, because when we started in Israel, we did, and we still do institutional investment conferences and corporate finance. And when you're a CFO or a CIO of a fund, you cannot fool people. You either have a card or you don't. Family office, people can say whatever they want. And I think most of the family office so-called conferences would bring people that have a family and have an office. But that's as far as it gets to family office. So I
You're right.
And so, and by the way, you mentioned blockchain, Anthony. So I'll say just one more thing about us. We came from Israel. One of the edges we found doing what we do was technology and innovation. So we ended up doing a sub-conference dedicated to technology and family offices. We do that with Baker McKenzie in London and others, Sherman and Sterling and Eric Feinstein here, and Fasken and Oslo in Canada. So we are very tech-oriented. And therefore, in 2018, families came and said, you got to do a blockchain conference. And we were very hesitant because I went to a blockchain conference and I said to myself, you know, most of the people here, I don't want to meet again. They are crazy. They have white papers that I wouldn't touch in a million years. And the advisors, I was like, I saw advisors that before that were PR managers or PAs of people, and suddenly they advise blockchain companies what to do. So I saw all that, but then I learned more, and I brought the better side of blockchain, you know, the Barry Silberts, the people that actually came from real business and got in here. And Anthony Diorio, that's what I wanted to say really, is a good friend of ours. He's the co-founder of Ethereum, and he speaks at our Toronto conference on April 7th in Toronto. He's our keynote speaker, just saying. And we'll touch blockchain in a second. Maybe before we jump into all your investments and your thoughts, how did COVID affected you? How did COVID affected your investments? How did COVID affected your business? How did COVID affected your time with your children? Are we at a better place? Are we at a worse place? How do you see all of that?
So on a macro level, of course, we wouldn't wish the pandemic on anyone, but for our family individually, it's been really amazing. So pre-pandemic, I was in the office 4 or 5 days a week. I was only able to, I did 3-4 meetings a day with prospective managers. And, you know, post-pandemic, I can do 6 to 8 Zooms a day, and I'm doing it mostly from home. I've been able to spend so much more time with my baby. So I've told you about my firstborn son, Corby, but I also have a second son who's 5 years old. And when the pandemic hit, he was 3. And he was barely talking, and he wasn't potty trained, and our nanny left during that time. So when he left, I really, we still had, we did homeschool, but because of the time I personally spent with my son, he started talking. He's become potty trained. He's testing at the 2nd grade, 3rd grade level for pattern recognition. And I realized that there was no substitute for me being with my son. And so that has been such a blessing. We're so much closer now as a family. Also for our investments, it totally changed my view. So I realized that I was doing a lot of outward facing meetings and a lot of outward facing connections that took a lot of time. During the pandemic, we became very reflective as a family and as a family office. And that's really when we start to get very deep into crypto, because, you know, we wanted to see, during this time, I was able to reposition ourselves and see what we wanted to look and think further out than just this year's performance, think further out than just this quarter, right? So we started thinking 1, 3, 5, 7 years. And during the pandemic, I've really met some amazing people. And I feel like the pandemic has allowed me to cut out a lot of the noise. So I'm grateful, actually.
And let's talk a little bit about how you see the financial markets. I mean, I used to be a financial journalist. When I covered 9/11, you know, the markets in 9/11, you know, the markets took a huge hit, and it was a big deal. Now we're after 2 years of a global 9/11 in a way. Bankruptcies, loss of capital, taxpayers' money being thrown in the billions all around the place. And it seems like the markets are relatively cool. And the question is how do you see the financial markets today? Are we going did they actually priced everything and everything's fine now and we are back on track? How do you see the financial markets today?
So whenever you've had a big shakeup like the Ukraine, you'll see a tremendous amount of volatility, but price stabilization within 30 days. So that's one component. The other thing that I've been watching and concerned about is the crypto correlation to equities. My personal belief is that crypto should eventually be decoupled from equities, and we've been seeing that a little bit. You know, you see the 15% drop in the S&P, and we just don't know when it's going to come back. In the last year or so previous to this year, previous to the last 12 months, What I've always heard when there was a dip is buy on the dip, buy on the dip. But if you continue to buy on the dip in this market, you may not have enough dry powder to buy more on the dip. And what I've been hearing more and more, people are selling on the up. And so, and I've also seen, so if when the crypto market goes down 15%, it's really not that big of a deal. That's how volatile crypto is. And on top of that, we're pretty confident it will come back. I'm confident in the technology. I'm confident in all the uses of crypto. I think that big picture, I think we are, as a country, will be okay. Globally, we'll be okay. I can't predict what Putin's going to do. But one of the reasons we have this hyperinflation is because our government decided to print so much. And as Americans, as a culture, we love to spend. So if you get $3,000 as an American, you'll spend $3,500. But that that faucet has been turned off. People will start to go back to work. I think the inflation will. I know that the Fed wants to, if they were hawkish, they're talking about 50 bips, but I think more recently they're talking about 25 bips. I'm hoping that when they see what's going on internationally, that they'll be a little more dovish and think twice, because either they give us too many rate hikes and we end up in a forced recession next year, or they're in a tight spot. They're going to have to thread the needle so that, let's say they raise us 25 bips, but there are other components. And then of course, we've got, everyday issues like oil. So I also think I can't predict what this government's going to do, but I do feel like we as a country have more than enough resources to be self-sustainable. We should move in that direction, especially with what's going on with the Ukraine and Russia. But Denny, if I had that kind of power, I'd be, I'd be elsewhere. So I can't predict, but these are my macro views for now.
And talking about blockchain, your favorite topic. So I'll be devil's advocate a little bit. So one criticism you just mentioned lately was that, blockchain's supporters, let's talk about the cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. They said that it's uncorrelated. And then, like you just mentioned, everything goes down, and then suddenly the prices go down as well. And people are saying, wait a minute, it is correlated. So what have we done here? Why is it happening? I mean, and whenever I read, when I was a journalist, when I was reading the analysts,
yes,
when it's the financial markets, there's always a good explanation. But whenever I read the explanations about the crypto market, there's never a good explanation. They have no idea what's going on. All the analysts that are covering blockchain, they're writing, oh, today it went down 15% because there was a sell-off. Oh yeah, we kind of figured that out. But people don't even know to explain what's going on. So forget the analyst. So why is there a correlation? Is there a correlation? How do you see that?
So what I said was that there should not be a correlation, and I'm hoping that they will decouple over time. However, it has been a correlation because the reason you see crypto going down when equities goes down is when there's a liquidity crunch, right? So when there's enough going on in the world that people are just chasing liquidity, they're going to sell down their most liquid. So that is crypto, that is equities. And so when people need money, you'll see it go down. However, that will change over time because they really should not be correlated. And the reason, there've always been reasons for a sell down. So what we saw last spring, China kicked out all the Bitcoin miners, right? So there's always been a reason for it. And I guess we as a community should do better in explaining it. And it's still correlated in that, so for instance, when the market is so volatile, a lot of the hedge funds will be risk off. During a risk off period, they will not be accumulating crypto. Crypto is currently considered a high risk asset. And so it's correlated in that when it's like this, when people need money, they're just going to try and get money from anywhere. However, on a technology level and on an asset level in the future, you will see them being more and more decoupled.
And again, a devil's advocate question. Some of the so in the beginning, we heard that blockchain is going to be an amazing technology. It's going to be everywhere. You can sell parts of real estate, of buildings with smart contracts. You can transfer money, small amounts to people that need it abroad. And then it turns out that that's too slow. And it turns out that we didn't see it yet being used. Or, I mean, there were many, many promises. There are still in supply chain and all of that. And I'm not, you know more than me where we stand with that. The only thing it seems to me as an outsider that works is Bitcoin, in the fact that it's, and even that, by the way, people, unfortunately, the vendors don't really implement it yet. But it does work as a mean of exchanging currency. But all the promises that were made in all those big ideas, is anything happening already that's really working and functional? And you say, oh, that Bitcoin really helps us here, and blockchain, sorry, and it's great.
So most recently, you saw what's going on in the Ukraine, and $10 million worth of Bitcoin was dropped. That was the fastest way to send money to the Ukraine. So, but I understand what you're saying about everyday uses. So for instance, all the big banks right now, they're on a certain platform, but they're shifting, I think by year 2023, it's ISO 225. They're going to be using platforms or technologies like Ripple. So Ripple will be helping all these institutions with the technology, and you will need XRP tokens in order to transact. And there's only a finite amount of all of these tokens, and so the prices will naturally rise for these uses, and you will see it more and more. So another example is LastPass, right? So everyone's always looked, we've got all these tons of passwords for all our different accounts, for all our different apps. LastPass uses crypto technology to safeguard our passwords. So let's say LastPass is hacked, because it's the decentralized technology, because it's crypto, you're not going to get past the first gate. So we are seeing it in everyday uses. It's just, I don't think it's not as well advertised. And we're also on the cusp. So I don't know if you remember AOL from years ago, but there was a time where you could be in a room with 7 computers and they would be connected to 7 different networks. And it was AOL that created the World Wide Web, and the network that brought the internet together. And I think we are there. One of our favorite companies is Flare, and Flare is working on interoperability, the bridges to bridge all of crypto together. And once that comes, you'll see, it'll be very evident, all the uses for crypto and the technologies. And to your point, and I love it when you play devil's advocate, because I know it's going to be interesting. To your point, there will be some projects that fail. There will be some NFTs that go to zero. And I think that's part of the opportunity right now, which is picking the right projects, picking the right people to partner with. And traditional finance, I think, so culturally, I feel like I'm much more of a crypto person, but I have learned a lot from traditional finance. And so part of that is picking the right partners and the right projects and the things that will have longevity. And you'll also be seeing a lot of mergers, right? Just technologies merging, and it's a different type of M&A than we've seen on Wall Street previously. This will be, an emerging of different tokens, an emerging of different projects. It's a really exciting time.
And I have, thank you. I have 2 questions for you on cryptocurrencies. Maybe I'll start with the first one. That's what do you like? Which coins are you looking at? Ethereum, at Bitcoin? Which coins do you like? And yeah, that's basically the
so we like, Flare, CompuCoin. I like Constellation. There's a lot of coins that I like. A lot of times, so here's the thing. We don't run any outside money. So I'm reticent to give financial advice to people. I've spoken on Tiger 21 on multiple panels, and I was on this one panel with David Bailey, and David Bailey said it's frankly absolutely irresponsible not to own crypto in your portfolio. So I'm not willing to say that. But what I would like to make aware is, if someone is not in crypto at all and would like to do it, my suggestion to them is to open a Coinbase account and maybe do 45% Bitcoin, 45% Ethereum, and 10% altcoins. Because I think with the altcoins, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, because the movement in altcoins is fast, right? And it has to be very actively managed. But I do think, you can't go wrong with Bitcoin and Ethereum and the technology. So, Ethereum, there's so many applications and use for Ethereum, and Litecoin is not as exciting, but it's less expensive. It's faster to traffic in. And so I think Litecoin is also a great position.
And what's your view on crazy coins like Dogecoin and the fact that, people like Musk can wake up every day? I asked somebody, is it even legal what he's doing? The fact that he can manipulate the market, well, not manipulate, but the fact that everything he says has such a strong influence. And there are many other influences less known than Musk that may have positions and may say things, and that's still not regulated. People say whatever they want and influence the herd in a way that's listening to them and immediately sells or buys. What's your thoughts about the easiness of influencing the some coins in the market and coins like Dogecoin that since day one they said this is a joke? Why would people invest in it?
So what's interesting about this whole community is that I think a lot of what can influence the value is what's going on in Twitter or Discord. You have to be careful. And I think the other component that's been happening is people will hire celebrities to endorse a coin, right? Or to endorse the technology. So it's similar to what happened to me when I was defrauded. It's buyer beware. But they're moving the market. So it's sometimes, we've discussed this internally, sometimes the conversation in Twitter really is about the valuation. So it's up to the individual to make a judgment on whether or not they're going to make a trade based upon what's going on in Twitterverse.
Mm-hmm. Now, somebody's asking here, thank you for your insights. What are your perspectives on NFTs?
I think NFTs are amazing as a technology. I absolutely think that they're here to stay. I think you have to be very careful about NFTs. Your base value, it's cost, like what it costs to make that NFT. But sometimes a lot of NFTs can go to zero. And I think I don't trade it myself. I have guys who trade it for me. So my son Corby trades in NFTs, and he's done well so far. I think it's like anything else. There could be big winners, and then there could be things that actually go down to zero. So Corby's actually the crypto advisor to New York Giants football team, and he loves the space. And he's working with Flare on their interoperability projects. But I think that technology is here to stay. But again, you have to look at it individually.
And blockchain. So you like crypto, and we talked about NFTs. What about blockchain? Do you see which areas there? It's a vast area you find interesting in investing and early stage, more established firms. How do you see that?
So blockchain, it's all under the same umbrella as crypto. So what I've been doing is we've been mixing it up. We do a lot of ourselves individually, but I've also been investing in outside funds and outside managers because the space it moves so quickly. And there's so many different ways to play crypto and blockchain and NFTs. One of the things we've been doing is node validation. So we've been validating for Flare. And when we started node validating, we were probably top 10 validators out of 150. And then we became top 5. And recently we've become top 3. So there are more exciting blockchains, less exciting. There's all these different ways of playing crypto. There's all these different components. You can be in the projects, you can be in a manager. We work with also big guys like BlockFi, Celsius, Genesis, Hunting Hill, for all these different investments on blockchain, crypto. And then for the node validating, it's a great relationship, because in order to node validate, depending on the token that you're validating, it's important to have a good relationship with the founder. We've also been speaking with Ian Epstein at Enigma, and Enigma's been great because they've been offering, and where we've been working on creating an ecosystem on everything that Witter Family Office is working on with regard to crypto. And so I don't want to make specific recommendations, but I think there's all these different ways you can play it. And certainly I hear about a new crypto fund cropping up every week. So there's a lot of opportunities to have a professional manage your crypto blockchain investments as well.
And do you, I mean, we don't really see the institutional guys still investing in this area yet. Do you see that changing, or because I don't think pension funds are playing here yet, or maybe some.
So when you talk about, so there's some, like there's Pantera. We've been in talks with Pantera, Menai, Coin Fund. I would consider them fairly institutional, but they're crypto, right? They're crypto shops. For what you're talking about, what's been very interesting is that a lot of these pensions and a lot of these funds who are more established, it's not included in their mandate to invest in crypto. So they're technically not allowed to in some of these bigger hedge funds. So what they can do, and what I've seen them do, is they buy Grayscale products. So Grayscale is a crypto trust. They have GBTC, ETH, LTCN. So you can get crypto exposure by investing in these trusts without violating the mandates of the pension funds or the hedge funds. I think Kathy Wood is invested in Grayscale products, and it's 0.99. I don't remember the exact ratio, but just think of it as 10%. But these trusts are actually holding, their underlying is actually holding Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and so you can get exposure. And currently you can get exposure for below what the spot costs. And so it's actually a great deal. And you can put it in your, if the portfolio managers so choose, they can include these products in the pension funds and other of the larger vehicles and get exposure to crypto without, getting a Coinbase account.
Thank you. Someone is asking here, are you concerned about regulators and their influence?
Always. I mean, you see, I never realized how much government impact there could be. And it's really hit home, as my family fled from communism in the 1950s. If you can have the highest possible IQ, but if your infrastructure is not conducive to growth, intellectual stimulation, capitalism, it can be challenging. And so the crypto community has a strong lobbying force. I think the government and the SEC is still trying to catch up with the technology. And I know that the SEC has created a crypto department just devoted to understanding crypto. The other component to this is the IRS, right? So as the IRS understands better what's happening in crypto, I think they're going to start auditing crypto traders more and more. Currently, if you trade crypto, they want you to disclose it right at the front of your tax return. And in the United States, the IRS has the ability to audit you for the previous 10 years. So I think whatever we're doing now, maybe 10 years from now, the IRS will start taking a look, or probably sooner, but they have a lot on their plate. And I know that crypto is very interesting to them because of the gains, right? It's a great source of revenue. And along with the government, I think a lot of the governments are going to move to their own CBDC, but that's only good for the crypto community, right? It's just the more people adopt crypto, the better it is for crypto. And I think the government's trying to figure out how to do it. If anything, from what I've seen, because I've been looking for a better place to reside, being that we are such a crypto focused family office, is Singapore. So when I speak to the Singapore EDB, their view on crypto is welcome in Singapore as long as there's nothing nefarious. So, and I think that's really the ideal model. Singapore has done so many things the right way. And I'm a huge supporter of Singapore. I just can't really do the time zone, but maybe eventually. So, but I think that philosophy is right, which is let growth, let growth rip. And just if there's any way to have visibility to track the crypto so that we know that it's not, causing harm, then crypto should be able to grow on its own. And I still have not figured out what the American view is on it. And in fact, in America, what I found with crypto, it varies state by state. So for instance, New Hampshire is much more crypto friendly than Vermont, but I'm not quite sure why. And so we've got, it's complicated, but you bring up a good component, you bring up a good perspective, because if the government decides to clamp down, first of all, I don't see how they can do it. We're a little bit far gone, but there will be something. It's just hard for me to say what it will be.
Now, Dr. Sorby here is asking, do you think that cryptocurrencies are like, don't you think they are like the wild west in a way, in particularly Bitcoin, so many scare stories?
100%, but that's part of the excitement. You know, I have to tell you, there's a great advertisement, crypto advertisement on starting LeBron James. And it's LeBron James current and LeBron James when he was in high school. And at the end of it, there's a saying, fortune favors the brave. And I firmly believe that. I wish that we had been blessed with a lot more assets than we were. I would not be where we are now if I didn't take risk. Dean Witter would not be he would not have been able to achieve what he achieved if he had not risked, because the Witters actually arrived shortly after the Mayflower, and Dean Witter traveled with his family. His family, the Witters, traveled out to California by wagon for religious freedom. You know, and my father came to United States for freedom as well. And all these things require a tremendous amount of risk. And so here's the thing: if you don't want to take the risk, no one's going to force you to buy Bitcoin. But I think the fact that it is indeed the wild, wild west, or it's just like the wild, wild world, that's where you're going to find the opportunity. And of course, there's going to be winners and losers. But I think crypto is an arena finally where you can play your guts out and really make something happen for your family. You know, if you look at traditional finance started in the Netherlands hundreds of years ago. It's very difficult to find that upside, that growth, and arbitrage started to go away because the traditional finance industry has become so efficient. It's almost flat, right? The volatility and the unpredictability of crypto is what's going to give a lot of us the opportunity to make more for our families. And honestly, people talk about ESG. Crypto checks that box, because there are a lot of governments, speaking of regulation, they're going to require you use clean energy to mine your Bitcoin, mine your Ethereum, and use clean energy to get your NFTs. And then if you want to do, people are like, oh, Sherry, are you only invest in the United States? Are you invested internationally? Crypto is an international play. So crypto checks a lot of boxes. It's also impact investing. For instance, there's Axie Infinity, right? So in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines in particular, it's difficult to revenue. You can play Axie Infinity and make more than 7 days a week on your feet in an assembly line. So you can make 6 digits being a digital window operator, right? So a digital service provider online for crypto. Crypto is opening up. I think it's going to lift the bottom. I think it's going to lift the middle. And I think it's going to be inspiring for society as a whole to continue to innovate and to solve things with technology and with passion, as opposed to chasing after a shrinking pie. I feel like crypto is all about growing the pie and building something more. And it feels amazing.
And I have this question for you. I mean, we are neighbors in the same area. And my question is, how come you didn't, speaking about running towards freedom, you didn't run away from New York already? I was sitting with the commissioner of New York City, and hopefully the mayor will come to speak at the conference we're doing at the World Trade Center next month. And I mean, everybody are getting out of the, first of all, I just came from a vacation in San Diego and San Francisco, and I can tell you weather-wise, we're screwed. I just came here and I was like, oh my God. But forget that. We are paying some of the highest taxes in America. People are running away, and even well-to-do people that can handle the taxes. I just spoke with the Bloomberg capital that moved from, I think, San Francisco to Miami. So people are running towards Miami, where, as you know, speaking about blockchain, they have a very good mayor, very pro blockchain that is just doing the right thing to attract everybody there. No taxes. I mean, some taxes. People are going to Texas and Miami. You're here. New York City has done some very big mistakes, I think, lately. Crime has gone up. How do you see all of that?
Denny, I agree with many of the things you've said. I think it depends on your individual situation. So my older son is based out of the city and we're still in Chelsea. I think that there are many components to this. So we've done Florida. My older son actually grew up wintering down on Jupiter Island. And I know that there's a huge growing crypto community, but I think for meeting founders, I just had a great founder meeting in Chelsea yesterday, and I feel like New York is actually very much a crypto hub for talent. Miami and Florida, I almost feel like that's a place where you go when you've made all your money and you're just going to grow it. But if you're hiring a team, if you're hiring engineers, we've been hiring engineers, it's very difficult to find that level of talent. Whereas New York still sits between all the great schools, Penn Engineering, Harvard, MIT. And then on top of that, it's, we've looked at the school situation. So New York City, like I've raised my sons going to school in the city. We're going to make a decision. The taxes are a concern for sure. And I've looked at Puerto Rico, but over 53% of Puerto Rico is sits under the poverty line. We'd like to be in a place is safe. And Denny, to your point about New York making a lot of mistakes, de Blasio did make a lot of mistakes. I'm not sure how Eric Adams will be. Crime is a concern. But what I realized, because I was just at dinner Midtown with a head of a family office, and there's the connectivity in the city. So I still don't do large platforms. So I'm not doing big conferences, but I'll do one-on-one meetings. And New York is great for that. And nothing against Florida. I think Florida is wonderful. We've been to, we've spent a lot of time there. I'm just not ready to make the move. But to your point about taxes, it's all a good point. It's all a good point, but it also depends on what we're in the building stage. I don't know when I might ever be in everyone always asks me, what's my number? I don't have a number. My number is always more. And if I ever felt like I didn't want to do more, I think maybe I'd go down to Florida. But my motto is, let's try to revenue 7 days a week, at least for as long as I can. And when I can't, maybe I'll look at Florida. I
completely agree with you. I mean, I'm being, again, devil's advocate. I'm here not because of the weather, because there is only one place on earth where everybody go to at some point. And it's not LA, and it's not Miami, and it's not London, and it's not anywhere else. It's New York City still. But, when I said, when we spoke then with the commissioner, just New York has other issues that are beyond mistakes. People leaving the cities, everybody are leaving the cities. And when I mentioned mistakes, I think it was a lot of criticism that they took, I think, the prisoners, right, during COVID and placed them at high-tier hotels. And suddenly the people that paid so much to be in a high-tier neighborhood suddenly have crime around them. So, in that respect, I think they have some challenges to deal with.
No, 100%. They've let out all the prisoners, or a lot of the prisoners from Rikers Island. They're closing prisons all around New York. They mandated that the hotels on the Upper West Side house a lot of these homeless individuals, the individuals that need mental, emotional support, and prisoners. And it worsened the neighborhoods. So I see what you're saying, and I think it depends on your view. So I think in New York, what's so amazing about New York is that it still has many tiers. I think at the billionaire level, you have your drivers, you have your security. So what's happening in the city doesn't even touch you. I see Ken Griffin gobbling up real estate. I see, I see apartments on for hundreds of millions of dollars still. But it comes down to lifestyle. So what's interesting about your area in Rye, Denny, and I'm sure you already know this, the area in New York, the local areas, suburbs of New York have become very popular because you can jet into the city, but you can just work, you can work from home like 3-4 days a week, just go into the office 1 or 2 days a week. So Greenwich real estate has truly boomed. And it depends on your lifestyle. And what we noticed also with regard to real estate is that the Hamptons went through the roof during the pandemic, and that there are some people who are looking to downsize from the Hamptons, and they're downsizing to Greenwich, to Westchester, to Rye, right? And so that's been really great for real estate. There's hardly any inventory in Greenwich, but with Greenwich and with you and Rye, we're near the Westchester airport, and so people can keep their Palm Beach homes, their Miami homes, then they have their Connecticut, Westchester homes, and their apartments in the city. And so it depends on the lifestyle. However, if you're in a zone where you're only having one home and it's, below $3 million in New York, you're thinking hard about whether or not to stay. And, people who are, the Wall Street bonuses were actually outstanding this past year. But I think people are always thinking taxes. My son got his bonus check, and 2/3 of it was gone. And I tried to, he was like, what happened? And I tried to explain to him, I didn't think he could see till it actually happened to him, how much taxes eats into your net number. So that's always a concern.
Yeah, and they're dealing with other topics. I mean, this is a different topic, but it's just interesting. We got to talk about it. Being liberal and all is nice, but when you speak to cops and they tell you, we are not allowed to touch a homeless person that shouts at you in the street. We're not allowed to touch him unless he actually committed a crime, which before we could come and say, sir, you need to not be here, you need to move. They cannot do that anymore. And that up until a certain level, like $200, if you steal, the police won't come if it's below a certain level. So many things created a very sensitive situation where I'm hearing interesting stories. Which brings me maybe just to real estate. How do you see real estate? Do you invest in what kind of real estate? How do you see that market?
So currently the largest real estate holder in the country is Blackstone. And they're buying single family homes, multifamily residences. And I think that's super interesting. So I think at the lower level, many people are moving to renting. And I also think that it depends on where you buy. I think it depends. And if you're looking at luxury real estate or investment real estate, for me, real estate's not that interesting. As I mentioned earlier in the talk, my father was in real estate, and as a little girl growing up, and this was before my father actually could afford property managers, every time a tenant moved out, I would have my own little toolbox and my notepad and pen, and I would go with my father when the tenants moved out, make a list. I was responsible for everything my level and below, so I would check the sockets, I would check the sinks to see if there are leaks, and I would make a list for the handyman. And if there was anything small that I could fix, my father would hold me responsible. And so it just personally and anecdotally, I'm not that interested in real estate. I think ultimately, if you're looking for a good tax play, real estate's great to have in your portfolio just because of all the expenses that you can deduct. And also, if you're looking at principal protection where you want it to be a lot less volatile than crypto, I think you can buy, nice pieces of investment properties and collect the income from it. So I think it really depends on your personal view. But for me, it's just not that exciting. And perhaps I'm tainted because my dad was such a taskmaster.
So last question for you. Your husband, Michael,
yes,
focuses on the philanthropic mission of the firm. The Witter family's charitable commitment dates back to 1924, when
yes.
Michael Witter's grandfather, Dean Witter, founded his brokerage firm in San Francisco. So what's you guys are doing so much in philanthropy. What do you guys do?
So Dean Witter started his foundation years ago. His favorite charities at the time was land conservation. So Michael has continued that and let that expand to U.S. military, Israeli military. So yes. So I forgot what it's called, but it's when your limbs are blown off in explosions. So it's an organization that replaces the limbs for you. And so my husband supports that, and then education. And so Dean Witter started his foundation, but our foundations are completely separate. And also Dean Witter had 16 grandchildren. So the foundation has really changed. We have and it's no longer funded. And there, whatever was funded is completely different now, and the mandate's completely different. So the foundations that I created for us is land conservation, military. We support Israel in particular because we feel like, first of all, culturally we're very similar. Also, it's our only landing pad geographically in the Middle East. I feel like the ethos of Israel is very close to the entrepreneurialism and capitalism of America. And we also believe in education. And so, in fact, I just recently invested in a Swiss fund that hires Israeli engineers. So we feel a lot of connections between America, the United States, and Israel. My husband's passion is a lot of these conservation causes and military, and he just loves it. It's a real passion for him.
And how do you keep such a great marriage after so many decades? I mean,
I never said it was a great marriage. we have our ups and downs. We've been together over 2 decades, and we've been together since we were 22 years old. And I have to tell you, I feel like the luckiest person in the world, because we have always felt like it was us against the world. We were very much aligned in much of our life. Nothing's perfect, Denny. I don't ever want to fool people or be dishonest, and we work at it. I think marriage is a full-time job. And on top of that, what I do is I work on myself individually. I have a personal improvement list. And then, I hope that makes me better for the marriage, because you also can't guarantee that we all grow at the same pace. There are times in my life that I've grown at a slower pace and times at a faster pace. I'm grateful to be in a time period where I'm growing faster. And I think it's actually an amazing privilege to go through life with someone that you love so much. But please, Denny, it's not perfect. I suffer.
I used to joke, and many people didn't understand my jokes, especially my wife, saying, in the sessions I did when COVID started, that COVID made us spend so much more time with our loved ones, which is why we love them a little bit less now. And when I did a post at some point, after when COVID a little bit ended, and I went to eat junk food not junk food, but I went to a diner to eat a burger finally at a restaurant.
Nice.
And I wrote about it. Finally, not homemade food. That was the last time I got homemade food for a month after posting that. So there's another question for you here. In previous banking career, I remember Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter. Is that the same Dean Witter? Yes, it is, I believe.
Yes, it is.
And Mike here writes, thank you, Sherry, for your marriage wisdom. I've been married for 26 years and I have a son with autism. Thank you for sharing that.
No, thank you for sharing. And I mentioned earlier in my talk, my son was speech delayed, and we're not sure, I actually, full confession, I believe I'm on the spectrum as well, but I'm not from the generation that people diagnose that. And so I think, my sons are a little bit on the spectrum. So I am so grateful he shared that. And I want him to know that the IQ tends to be higher. And then they end up doing, I'm in a group called R360 with a great person whose son, it was also possibly on the spectrum. And then he just, in the recent years tested, he's a genius, he's Mensa. So I'm always very open about my struggles, because I want people to be able to learn from me, and I want to be able to help people, however I can. That was very nice, Danny. Thank you.
And I really share the same views. I have ADHD as well. That's why, by the way, our conferences don't have a theme, not because I always say that's our strategy. It's just because we're not concentrated enough to have a theme. So our conferences.
I agree.
From technology to real estate to estate planning to everything. And when we were young, I couldn't concentrate, right? And others could. You got punished at school because you're a bad student. People didn't understand then that actually we're the smart ones. But not only that, we were disadvantaged with those who could focus,
Yes, and ultimately it made, I believe, because of my ADHD, it makes people like me and you're like my brother from another mother. It makes us more resourceful and creative to problem solve, right? So because I couldn't focus on one subject for more than 10, 15 minutes, I would literally lay out books for 5 different subjects, and I would just go 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, because I'm like you, Denny, like the conversation could flow anywhere, right? And so we developed tools to cope and to improve, and also and I think it ultimately makes us great problem solvers.
And
So
I always like to ask unrelated questions. So are you a morning person or a night person?
I'm a morning person, but I'm also I'm not a late night person. I start to wind down with a glass of wine probably around 7. So in China, for the longest time, they said they had something called 996, which is their people work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. And I, laughingly say I'm 7 11 7 7 7 11. So I'm 7 a.m. 7 p.m. Sorry, 7 to 11 p.m. 7 days a week, but between the hours of 7-11, I'm doing it with a glass of wine.
Amazing. So, Sherry, I wanted to, first of all, of course, thank you for your time and being with us today. I think it was an exceptional discussion, not like, the many others we do. Thank you for sharing all of those stories. And I, of course, would love to have you with us again at our live conferences.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege.
Of course, of course. And by the way, I'll tell you, we have two very interesting, I'll just tell everybody quickly, we have two interesting discussions coming up next. So Yigal Ozeri, I have to introduce you to him, one of the biggest artists to ever come out of Israel, photorealism. I will speak with him on March 10th here, and very interesting. I'll be speaking to Robin Williams's, the amazing actor, son, Zach Williams, and we'll talk about mental health issues and the work he does in that space. And that's going to happen on March 15th. And quickly, we are just, as some of you know, getting ready for our family office conferences in Canada. So we got Montreal on the 5th. We got Toronto on the 7th and Vancouver on the 12th. And here in New York City on the 20th, and my favorite city, 27th, we're doing a conference at the World Trade Center. Speakers like David Sable, the ex-CEO of Young and Rubicon, Najee Good, who's an ex-NFL player, Mitzi Perdue, her parents are Sheraton family, her late husband, Perdue Chicken, Lauren Selig, her father, she's a film producer. Her father is the billionaire Martin Selig in real estate. Hannah Bronfman, an amazing young lady, and the Silverstein family. And hopefully I'll see you there as well, Sherry. And I'd like to thank you again, and I can't wait to see you in person.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure. And I really admire everything you've built. And I feel so excited to be included. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.